Old Survivor is the only known old-growth redwood left in the East Bay and Oakland Hills. It's this beautiful, scraggly old tree that we know is about 500 years old. It started growing back in the Renaissance. It's just this amazing, resilient tree that looks out over Oakland.
Here in the East Bay Hills, we have that single reminder, that legend, that myth of the ancient forest that dominated these hills, that over time we can bring back so that our great-grandchildren will be walking in a forest and it will begin to have that character, that ecological viability, that resilience, that biodiversity that we found here in the mid-1800s. I think Old Survivor, the name says it all. That sense of an entity that has survived the devastation of the forest around it, that now serves as the anchor from which the rest of the forest recovery will germinate. The redwood forest was the dominant ecosystem back hundreds of millions of years ago. They used to grow across the entire northern hemisphere. After Ice Age and climatic change, they've been constrained to this narrow band of about 450 miles on the California coastline. The climate that is optimal for the redwoods is exactly what we have here on the coast of California.
Redwoods are adapted to living in places where they get a lot of water. So here in the coast redwood forest, they drink in a lot of rain that comes in mostly in the winter and spring. But in the summer, the fog comes right in through the Golden Gate and drenches these forests. They are uniquely suited to take in that fog water directly into their leaves.
The redwood forest in the Oakland Hills, we believe, had among the largest trees in the world. They were tall enough that as the ships were coming into the San Francisco Bay, they were actually able to navigate based on the heights of the trees in the Oakland Hills.
Survey work that was done at the end of the 19th century found many stumps that were 12 to 20 feet in diameter. The largest one was 32 feet in diameter, which is just so incredibly big.
Every time I come up into these woods, I try to imagine what it was like when the old-growth forest was here before the 1850s. We would have had grizzly bears, there was California condors, and certainly the Ohlone people living here in harmony before the Spanish came. Soon after, the Spanish missionaries arrived, and then the next step is you have the gold rush and all the northern Europeans flooding into here and needing resources to build San Francisco.
The evolution from almost a pioneer outpost to a gold rush city was really fueled by the redwood forest. They took down the old growth for everything from construction material to firewood. So it was really just a matter of a decade before virtually every single old growth redwood tree in these hills were gone.
It was so drastically cut here. These were cut so early, there really wasn't an effort to conserve old growth. And old growth in the Bay Area, especially in the East Bay, is extremely rare.
The trees that were left behind, often call them legacy old growth trees, were left because either they were too hard to get to, or too hard to get out once they were cut down, or too twisted and gnarly and knotty to effectively serve their purpose. Old Survivor is a gnarly old tree, and because it was so difficult to get to, it was left behind. It's just remarkable to think of the pace of change in the life of this one tree as it's stood there looking out across the Bay Area. Even though all of the ancient old-growth trees were cut down, and in many cases even the next generation of redwood trees was cut down again by the turn of the century, the redwoods are so uniquely resilient that the forest grows today.
One of the really cool things about redwoods is that they can seem to live for multiple generations. A large tree will send up sprouts around the base, and once the old tree is gone, those sprouts take over and become the next generation in the forest. And they are often identical genetically.
It's really taken all this time to recover. It's been all those 150 years that it's taken to get to the forest we have, and it's growing very fast, but it doesn't represent the incredible old-growth forest that we once had here.
These still young redwood trees here in these logged forests have a lot of growing to do to become old growth again. Generations from now, we will be able to walk through a redwood forest here that has the old growth characteristics. The good news is these forests are protected and these trees are now growing. And the more stewardship we do in these forests and continue to nurture, the faster these trees will grow.
In the early 1900s, there was this amazing group of folks, especially in the East Bay, that were working hard to conserve parkland. The city of Oakland had a goal to preserve an acre of parkland for every 100 residents. Now, at the same time the city of Oakland was doing this, we had groups like Save the Redwoods League and Cal Berkeley and professors there and East Bay Regional Park working towards the same goal. It just was this amazing time of conservation that really allows these parklands to exist today.
The vision for the East Bay Regional Park District, it goes all the way back to the Great Depression. Imagine putting a tax measure forward in the Depression and having people in the Bay Area vote for it. And that's just a tremendous thing that we never forget about. Because we started so early, even though California wasn't one of the first states, we were the first to create a regional park system. And it was really quite, and still is, quite unique.
Save the Redwoods League was started 100 years ago. What was significant about the mission of the organization from the very beginning was not just saving the forest for the forest's sake, but saving the forest because of its role in creating healthy communities, because of how we as people, as residents of California, as visitors to California, are inspired by these places of beauty and awe. And so they were as committed to the parks as they were to the forest and to bringing people to these special places for inspiration. I credit those early visionaries of Save the Redwoods League and the East Bay Regional Park District for helping create a state where I want to live.
You can visit redwoods in the Oakland Hills in a number of parks. Within Oakland city limits, we have Leona Heights Park, Diamond Canyon, and Joaquin Miller Park. And then there's Redwood Park and Roberts Recreation Area within the sprawling East Bay Regional Park District.
We're right here in Oakland, California, one of the most urban cities in the country, and we have this wonderful natural environment. We appreciate the early planners of the city who had the forethought to preserve such a natural place for Oakland to enjoy. Kids need an opportunity to climb and to explore leaves and to find little critters because it creates an opportunity for kids to imagine. That just happens in nature, and it's really important.
Being born and raised in Oakland, to be able to go from a basketball court to trails within 5 minutes of each other, I didn't know the uniqueness of that. It's something that I took for granted, but as an adult and as I get older, that I appreciate. That experience to our open space has risen my awareness of just how critical it is for the mind, body, and soul. I truly love my redwoods.
By connecting people to these parks and establishing a sense of value, a sense of responsibility, a sense of ownership, is creating the stewards of the future, to make sure that the work that we've done to try and create these parks and restore them is then carried forward for future generations.
We're trying to share with our students is the importance of these redwood forests, and even these second growth forests that they're experiencing one day will hopefully be old growths. So our scientists have been going out and kind of trying to understand what's going on with these redwood forests in climate change. And so the measurements and the different activities that we're going to be doing today are exactly the same that our scientists do in order to answer some of those questions.
Redwood forests are incredible at taking the ever-increasing carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere and converting that chemically into wood. But not just any wood, they convert it into that really dark red heartwood that is resistant to decay, to pests, and so that heartwood is locking up that carbon dioxide in a way that it's really storing it for us. So as our redwood forests are growing, we are creating a reservoir of carbon that's combating climate change by keeping that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. The second growth forests we have here in the Oakland Hills are really the prime example of what can happen in recovery of old growth forests after they've been logged. So what we see is many more trees in the forest than there would have been before it was logged. They're still small, but they're on their way to becoming large again. These second growth forests, once they have been growing for many decades, they become amazing habitat for many of the species that depend on redwood forests. I often see banana slugs. We see lots of squirrels, lots of birds that live in the canopy. Salamanders are surprisingly common.
It's a very mystical and magical place, not just because of the fog, but because of the light through the redwood forest. It's cinnamon sticks. You get that sense of wonder of the tall trees, but the light through those tall trees.
I don't have a spiritual bone in my body until I step foot in a redwood forest. When you walk into a redwood forest, you don't step up to a wall of trees. It's amazing the type of space you get in this towering forest.
You feel like you're walking through a cathedral. I find that people feel so much more relaxed and energized after they've been in a redwood forest. And I think it's just that getting to take a break from our daily hectic lives.
It's just a unique atmosphere where you and nature become one. It's more of a spiritual outing for me.
It is both aesthetically and with a sense of peace, just a beautiful place, with residents of all walks of life enjoying the trails and enjoying each other in a landscape that was protected for them.
We're the stewards of public land that everyone has access to, and it's just our responsibility to continue to raise the importance level so that we can be more well-funded and provide more programs and activities.
I think like most municipalities, the biggest challenge is funding. It's a huge challenge to maintain our redwoods with escalating costs and more demands. As Public Works, what we recognize is that we can't do it all ourselves. We need the community to help us. And that's one of the great qualities about Oakland is that we have such an engaged citizenry. We have a lot of folks that are looking to partner, but we have a lot of people that just care about Oakland.
I had a vision to start a volunteer park patrol up here. Park patrol primarily is adding some customer service to these parks, to give people trail advice, to give maps.
1, 2, 3, redwoods.
One of the other things that is really valuable with the park patrol program is keeping an eye on maintenance issues. It's really been a force for dealing with things like trees blocking trails and any minor slides, things like that. We also give our volunteers training in expediting emergency response. We assist the fire department in locating injured park users, and now that OPD has resurrected the mounted patrol, we're helping the officers become reacquainted with the trail system. It's amazing how groups in the city of Oakland have formed. Friends of Sassel Creek and the Friends of Waukee Miller Park and the Bicycle Trails Council and more recent Oakland Trails. And we all have our little bit different missions and goals, but we all work together to really fill a lot of the gaps that the city hasn't had the resources provide up here. It really is just an amazing group collaborating to make these parklands enjoyable and accessible for as many people as possible. One of the things that a lot of nonprofits in Oakland have in common is we're all part of the Adopt a Spot program. The Adopt a Spot program is a way that the city has been able to engage citizens to do work all over the city, something that we've certainly taken advantage of up here in Oakland's parklands.
Without that partnership, our parks suffer. We cannot do it in the city of Oakland without the energy that we have to work together to resolve and figure out how do we get to solutions to our issues.
Taking care of redwood forests is a perpetual act. It's going to require generations of people investing and making sure that these redwood forests stay healthy. But if we continue to take care of our parks and we all do our part to nurture these redwood forests, imagine a day in the future where the younger redwoods have grown up around old survivor. I think that's really what good looks like if we can regrow our redwood forests and help shelter that one remaining old tree.
The old survivor, for me, is very representative of the essence and the spirit of what Oakland is.
It represents the strength of Oakland, the age of Oakland, the uniqueness of Oakland, the wisdom of Oakland.
Just knowing what happened to the old growth forest here and that old survivor survived that and is still thriving on that side of the cliff. It's more than just a redwood tree. I think it's really just a symbol of perseverance and resilience.